Oh, no, it's too late. Hi, welcome everyone. The Q&A for Bleed With Me. We are very lucky to have Amelia Moses, who is the director. This is her feature debut in the world premiere, which is super exciting. I have Lauren Beatty and Lee Marshall, our lovely, like 90%, I'm bad at math, man. Like 66% of the cast, more or less. Definitely the stars of the film. I am super excited that we are able to talk about this movie. I fell in love with it the moment I saw it, and I'm really hoping that the audience did as well. As a chance to kind of get into talking to the most amount of people as possible and answering as many of your questions as we have, I'm just going to jump right into it. First, also thank you guys for being here. I really, really appreciate
Thanks for having us, Justine. Lee is looking beautiful right now.
Hi. Sorry, I was muted.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us. I'll take the blood off my face now. Just wanted it to feel cohesive from the live experience.
Continuation of the film, into this multimedia.
Yeah, the moment that you popped up, I actually thought it was real blood, and I'm like, wow. She spent so
Lee is very committed. She's very committed to the role. So.
Yeah, so I'd love to know, this has been 4 years in the making. Can you kind of go into the details of the inception of this idea to the release? Because I imagine it was a lot of ups and downs, and it's such a process to create a movie of this size, even with the Canadian Talent Fund involved and all of these other things. Yeah, so that's it.
Yeah, I feel like it wasn't 4 years, but I don't know for sure, actually looking at the timeline. But I feel like when we were shooting my short Undress Me in 2016, I remember talking to Lee kind of tentatively about a feature idea that was much more, it was a different film, but kind of with still had the couple and the single person kind of as the dynamic of the kind of core of the film. And then I knew once I finished film school that I really wanted to try to make a feature as soon as possible and kind of keep that ball rolling. And since the Talent to Watch telephone program was available, and it was some money, but it wasn't a ton of money, I knew that we kind of had to do something pretty micro budget and keep it quite limited. So, one location, 3 characters seemed kind of a doable thing to do well on that budget level. And then, I think it was kind of early 2017 that I started kind of writing the script or developing the ideas more specifically. And we actually applied to the Talent to Watch program twice and didn't get in the first time, which to some extent I'm really happy about, because I think I was able to just develop the film a lot more and in the end have a better product. And I wrote it with Lee in mind. And then Lauren came on board, I guess, pretty early on in the process, because we did a little kind of teaser thing, and Lauren was in that, and she just seemed really perfect for the role. So she came on board pretty early as well.
Okay, thank you so much. Sorry. So I know that this was also shot in Harrington in the middle of winter. I imagine that was no easy task. Could you kind of explain one, how you found the location and maybe some of the unique challenges of shooting? It's relatively the middle of nowhere, even though it's just a couple hours away from Montreal. Yeah, that's basically it. And then obviously too, the unique challenges of making that location one that's so singularly atmospheric.
Yeah, I mean, I was really worried about finding the cabin, because it obviously had to be pretty perfect, and we didn't have a lot of money to decorate it either. So, my production designer also was really we need to find somewhere that has a lot of stuff already in it. And we looked kind of all over Quebec for about 3 months probably. And then once we landed on that place, it was just so perfect. And we really lucked out. The problem was logistically, it was a bit of a nightmare. And it was on top of this kind of small hill. And because we shot kind of nearing the end of winter, there was so much buildup of ice and snow and everything. So getting the gear up was a pain. Getting Lauren up, Lauren had an injury a couple months prior, and so she had to be pulled up in a sled every day to set.
She looked really cute on the sled.
And on the first day of shooting, our power went out. Sorry?
Sorry, I said first it was the sled, and then we realized we could use the winch. So then
yes. So we had a whole system to get, get Lauren up there every day. And the first day of shooting, our power went out. We had to stop shooting halfway through a day, one night shoot, because there was a crazy snowstorm, and we were worried about getting the cast and crew back to the chalets they were staying at, and because the roads were just filling up with snow. So a lot of kind of what happened in the movie also happened to us in real life. But we really lucked out, because the scene where Rowan finally kind of escapes the cabin, we had this insane storm, and it just happened we were shooting that scene on that day, and it ended up being really cool. So
there were a lot of weird coincidences. Like our production designer, Stephanie Bravano, did a great job designing the cabin, but there were some weird coincidences. Like, you know, the scene where Rowan finds the box finally, that hole in the floor just was there, like weird. And the box that Steph had found fit perfectly into this hole in the ground.
It was a very weird cabin for sure. Yeah. I think by the end, I know Lee, you were really eager to get out of that place, because it definitely had a weird energy to it, but it lended, that lended itself nicely to the movie, but it was pretty claustrophobic. I think the cast and crew were like, we're going insane shooting here.
I think it was like the entire experience was claustrophobic. You had like so many people that were staying in these little cabins away from set, but then once you got everyone to set, you're in like, an even smaller space with all these people, and you know how much snow there is outside and how treacherous it is to even get back to where you're staying, let alone, any into civilization. So I think it really kind of lent itself to the atmosphere, because you felt almost like you were in captive in a way. So it was a bit tense and creepy, but it was also very still and calm, because it had to be. And just like the snow settling on everything, I think it really helped the atmosphere of the whole film.
And how long was
arrived on the sorry, just
no, I was just gonna ask, how long was the shoot?
It was 17 days, but I think we were only 15 at the cabin, because we had a few. The bathroom was actually at an apartment in Montreal. All I was going to say before was our first day of shooting, we got there and the well that provided running water to the cabin was frozen. So we also didn't have running water for 3 weeks. So that was also a pain in the ass. So yeah, there was a lot of
mad props
shit.
to the producer Marielle and production manager Olivier for lugging water up the hill in the snow. What champions! We couldn't have done it without them.
Yeah. And I mean, when you're working on a small scale like this, you end up having to do a lot of different tasks. It's rarely you're just going to be an actor, or you're kind of thrust into a new situation. Can you talk a little bit about the challenges, but also the advantages of working on a smaller budget film, especially one that's literally made outside of the support system of a major city, for example?
Yeah, Lee, did you want to say something?
No, you should go first.
Yeah, I mean, I think that low budget filmmaking gives you limitations. So to some extent that can kind of breed creativity, and it can be kind of helpful to work within that. And then, yeah, I think just, money gives you resources and gives you people and a team and stuff. And so our crew was really, really small. And so, yeah, people definitely were doing multiple things that normally a couple people would do, or they'd have a bigger team. But I think because we were such a small crew, you probably couldn't fit more people in that cabin. So there was that. But it meant that everyone was kind of very, very cohesive, and, you really work together, and you have to work that much harder on a kind of low budget film. So the people are there because they want to make it. And so they're definitely not there for the money. So that really, I think, allows people to be more creative in a lot of ways.
I have a question from one of the audience members, and it's about the scene at the sink. They want to know what you were eating, because it looked really gross. They suggest maybe a fish.
Well, at the sink, they might be combining two scenes. So there is a scene where I'm eating something in front of the fireplace, and that was one of those dead rabbits that you see hanging earlier on. At the sink, I was just meant to be drinking some blood in the dark in the middle of the night. So the glass you see is just sort of filled with blood. And then I know the coloring is pretty dark, but when I turn around, you can kind of see that I have blood dripping out of my mouth and down my chin. So that's what Rowan is seeing in the film.
We added a lot of kind of extra sounds as well too that Lauren wasn't necessarily making to kind of, you know, amp up the scene a little bit too, and as if she's kind of like choking or spluttering on it a little bit.
And practically, like, what literally were you, like, on the set, not in terms of in the movie, what were you eating?
Nothing.
So, yeah, I mean, well, do you mean like what was the fake blood made of, or like what was the
that's exactly what I mean. Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, Kay's gonna kill me because I don't remember exactly what the material is, but it's essentially this like she made a mold of a rabbit carcass out of this, I don't know what material it is, sorry Kay, but
gelatin maybe, I don't know, could be wrong.
Yeah, I don't know.
We're
but
not
anyway,
the experts.
She was able to make it look like it was essentially a skinned rabbit, and we covered that with basically the fake blood mixture, which was like corn syrup and chocolate sauce and food coloring, which was also the blood that me and Lee were soaked in or eating a lot of the times. So it was very, very sticky set.
But also sweet. Like Kay was very considerate. She made it quite delicious. Like it wasn't actually gross to eat. It was kind of just like very sugary syrup. Yeah.
Now that I've done two films.
Yeah.
Now that I've done two films with Lauren, I feel like I've covered you in a lot of blood and made you eat a lot of.
I've eaten a lot of blood in the last 2 years. Yeah.
And how did you guys actually achieve the shower scene? Because like when I saw that, like I think it's like absolutely stunning, but I imagine it was incredibly messy.
Yeah, so that was also our special effects person, Kay, who did a really amazing job, and she's very good at like working on a low budget, but like doing everything very practically. And, you know, she always comes up with really like interesting ways to go about it. So we talked about that scene, and she asked me like, do you want to cut away and then come back and then it's blood? And I was like, no, I want to see the transition on screen if that's doable. And she was like, okay. So then she worked towards that. And so basically the shower head that Lauren is using is not the shower head of the actual bathroom. So we had a bucket of water with a tube to that shower head, pretending it was a regular shower. And then once that water was finished, then we had a bucket of blood that then we replaced that. But the balance had to be really quick, because otherwise like the water would stop running, or it would be kind of too watered down, so it'd be more like pink. And it just worked really well. It was like one take. We couldn't really do it twice anyways, because we used a giant bucket of blood. Like it's coming up quickly, like you can't do that twice. And luckily it was our last shot of the whole film, because Lauren's hair turned pink as well from the blood. So once we saw it, I was like, thank God this was our last shot, because then we would have been fucked. Yeah. So yeah, no, I was super happy with it. It was one of those things when you're on set where you're just like, oh yes, it worked. Like, oh my God, because stuff rarely works.
It was amazing to actually be in that shower and seeing it happen in front of me, because there was so much kind of like, everyone was so nervous about like, you know, how well it was going to work. And there's, you know, like 10 people waiting outside, like, oh my God, is this going to work? Is it going to work? And I'm just like trying to keep calm and just like do this shower scene. And I remember seeing like it start to come out, and in like internally I was like, oh my God, it's amazing, it looks so good. But I just like tried.
You gotta stay in character.
Yeah. But I was like, you should have seen like my point of view of that tub after the scene was done was like, I wish I had a camera on my head and I could have filmed it, because it just looked like the most gruesome murder scene in that tub after it was done.
And we were shooting at the production designer's apartment, Stephanie, and it was pretty nasty afterwards. I felt really bad. I was like, thank you so much for letting us do this in your bathroom. My God, it's so nasty.
Yeah.
And someone asked in the audience, how many buckets of blood were used over the course of the entire production?
That I don't know. I do remember Kay mixing the blood for the shower scene, and it was like one of those big kind of like containers. And yeah, but I don't know for sure.
Like
we definitely had lots of it.
Buckets.
Yeah.
Like a Tupperware.
Mm-hmm. But massive. And then I think probably for the climax of the film as well, we definitely had a lot of blood, and I don't quite remember what happened because I was looking at the monitor, but I think something broke, and then it was dropping. The producer Marielle was like helping Kay out, and the blood dropped on Marielle, and she was covered in blood, and then it was all just very messy. Those things always are. So yeah.
Didn't we have to also put like a little baby swimming pool? Like, the inflatable ones that you put outside on the grass so like the little kids can toddle around?
We were very, very worried about getting blood on the cabin anywhere. So we had just like everywhere garbage bags to cover everything up. The DP were named on him, and I don't think he even got covered in blood. But then Lauren and Lee as well had to stand in like a inflatable pool. Yeah.
Well, yeah, the scene at the end, right, with where I'm sorry I hurt Lauren's character. We didn't get a lot of, like, I think we only had like one take for that. And I was genuinely surprised to have like a huge amount of blood splatter in my face. So both of us were quite overwhelmed by that. It was very realistic, even for us experiencing it as performers.
It was more than I thought it was going to be, for sure. I was like, oh, maybe in the film we don't know she actually did kill her until the very, very end when she comes back. But then once we saw how much blood was on your face, we're like, oh no, this is very clear.
Not ambiguous.
Yeah. No.
So I have a long question from Mark B, which is also a comment, which is also a compliment. The story is very enigmatic. What is happening could be interpreted in many ways. I would like to know where the story came from and how it was developed over time. Were there any major changes? Obviously, the story and ending are enigmatic on purpose, and why was it left that way? It's a lot to unpack.
Yeah. Well, I knew I really wanted to tell the story from Rowan's perspective, and kind of the original concept was like the way we can kind of project narratives onto other people, both like good and bad. And so I think in earlier drafts, like it was very much fully in Rowan's head, because I think that kind of leads to the tragedy of the ending too, of like, the one person she kind of connected with, she wasn't, she murdered. So I guess it kind of flipped back and forth a lot in the script writing process. But I definitely wanted the film to kind of be like up for interpretation, to kind of maybe like, to what degree is Emily doing something to Rowan? There was definitely some earlier versions, not that I ever wrote them down, but like where Emily was much more kind of a vampiric character. And then I think kind of shifted into kind of staying more in like a ambiguous space, like using a little bit of those tropes of kind of like blood consumption or something. Or the shower scene was kind of inspired by like the Elizabeth Bathory, I think her name is, the idea of like bathing in blood as like to keep you young, whatever, so that was kind of inspired from that. But yeah, I think one thing too was like when we were doing the rehearsals, Lauren asked me like, is Emily doing this? And I was like, you decide. I don't want to know, because I wanted to stay in Rowan's perspective. And I still don't actually know what Lauren chose to do. So maybe now's a good time for you to reveal how you played it.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I obviously, reading the script up first, I had probably a lot of the same questions that our audience had. So I went to Amelia and I had a bazillion questions. And I, as someone who really loves figuring out someone's backstory and knowing the exact details of everything, I asked Amelia for a lot of information. But then when she came back and said, like, actually, like you decide and don't tell me because I'm looking at this from Rowan's perspective. I actually thought that was really amazing, and super cool that I could just like make that choice for myself, and it wouldn't really change Rowan's perspective. But what I kind of decided to go with, I was tossing between like, is she actually doing this? Is she completely innocent and Rowan's just losing her mind? And what I settled with was something kind of in the middle. I know Amelia and I had conversations about the passing of Emily's sister and how that's mentioned that she died when Emily was younger, and how that could have perhaps led to Emily having Munchausen by proxy disorder, where she experienced this trauma of losing someone who was very dependent on her and that she was sort of a caretaker for, and felt needed by her, and then she lost that person. So I kind of played it as Emily seeks out friendships in her life because of this disorder, where these females that she becomes friends with are probably meeker than her, or more easily manipulated, where she can subtly kind of manipulate them and control them or make them a little bit sick so that they need her and that she feels like a caretaker. So in my mind, I was drugging Rowan to an extent, and I was doing that consciously to make her sort of need me. Also because of the accident that we then ended up kind of writing into the script, which weirdly filled a lot of gaps for my own backstory, is that, she now has Brendan doting on her and trying to do everything for her. And that's where a lot of the tension is coming from between the two of them, because she's like, stop treating me like a victim. I'm not a victim. I'm a caretaker. I need people to need me, So she's frustrated with him, and it makes her even more sort of crave that that caretaker role from Rowan. So to answer the question, yeah, it was somewhere in between. So I wasn't completely innocent, but I wasn't the, full-blown blood-eating monster that Rowan thought I was in my mind.
And for you, Lee, like working, like I imagine that at a certain point you also spoke with Lauren, and you were also working so closely together because it's really primarily three people in the whole film. How did you guys work together, and how did you build Rowan as a character as well?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that the script doesn't spell out about Rowan. So Amelia gave me the gift of being able to kind of create and play and figure things out. But so much of it happened on set as well. Like, I mean, I'm like Lauren, I also like to kind of think about where this character has been before the movie starts, but I don't want to make any decisions about exactly how a scene will go or exactly what will happen in the moment. So it was really fun to just like actually play on set on the day with Lauren and figure things out together. I mean, yeah, she made it kind of easy to just play off of and have a good time. But I mean, also it was not necessarily a good time for Rowan, but it was a good time for me as a performer. I had a lot of fun.
I did too.
Love you.
Love you.
I have a question from Jacqueline, who says she arrived a little late, but she's kind of working on the question that when we were talking about the bathroom, she wanted to know specifically about the bunny wallpaper, since that's such a big motif in the film. Was that something that was put in as part of the production design, or was that just part of her bathroom?
So the bathroom in the cabin that we shot at was way too small, and it didn't have a shower, and so we couldn't shoot there. So we were desperately looking for something new to kind of fill that gap. And then the production designer, Steph, was basically like, well, why don't we shoot in my my apartment, because then I can kind of have creative control and be able to change things and stuff, because it's her own space. And I was a bit apprehensive just because like Montreal apartments, you just know what they look like, and they don't look like remote cabins. And so I was a little worried, but she's like, no, I'm going to put up wallpaper. I'm going to do all these things. So it's like, okay, this is our only option. Like, I totally trust Steph that she thinks she can do it. And then she presented 3 wallpapers to me And she's like, I kind of like the rabbits, but is it too on the nose? And I was like, yeah, I don't know, maybe it is. But then I was like, fuck it, let's just go for it. And I still have some left over.
Oh my God, really? Should frame
So,
it.
and everyone comments on it. So I think it was the right choice.
Yeah.
I feel like too, if you're definitely kind of keeping within Rowan's headspace, it's like a lot of the stuff in the first half of the film kind of, could kind of get into her psyche, I guess. So I was like, it kind of works for that, and it's fun, and it looked really good. The bathroom, it made the space really cohesive.
Yeah, I never would have guessed it wasn't shot at the same location. It just like feels so seamlessly connected atmospherically, but also stylistically, which doesn't always work. So that's really incredible. So I'm going to take 3 more questions. So if anyone in the audience has any, they can throw them out, but I do have a few. So I apologize to anyone who I don't get to. I have a question from Sam McLean, who does say they also love the wallpaper. And they have a question for Lee. As the producer of the film, how was it to switch between the character of Rowan and her continually unhinged mentality while also tackling all the fires that need to be put out on an indie film? Awesome work, everyone.
Thank you. Well, first and foremost, the producer on the day of shooting and the lead producer on the film is Marielle Sharp. So she did an amazing job of making things just run smoothly and putting out little fires everywhere for all of us. So that I had the great joy and delight to really focus on the performing. As a producer, I've done more on the post-production end. So I really give full credit to Marielle for her work in pre-production and on set. But yeah, I mean, so on that end, I really, moving into post-production, have been just separating myself completely from my performance. Like, you kind of have to compartmentalize your work as an artist and a performer from your work as a producer, because you have to trust that the director did a good job of capturing those moments. And I fully trusted Amelia with this project. So I felt I loved the film, and I was so happy to join as a producer and help promote it later on in the stage of its creation.
And was it ever hard to be able to look at your performance, for example, because it's not very often that an actor has to go back and take those kind of more objective point of view, because your best shot from your point of view as an actor is not necessarily the best one from the point of view of the director or even the producer.
Yeah, normally my favorite shot is the one where I look nice, but there's not a lot.
We're trying to get the stills together. Lee's like, no, I don't look good in that one. Choose this still. I'm like, yeah, but it's the thing.
I mean, to be fair, I approved a lot of very sweaty stills. So, but yeah, no, you do kind of have to separate yourself from that. And it really just comes back to trusting the team. Like, at the end of the day, Rowan's a character, and yeah, I brought something to the table in terms of how I wanted to play her, but she was created by, all of the makeup that Ashley made, and all of the costumes that Steph chose, and all of the lighting that Jaden set up, and all of those lenses that, Renee and Amelia agonized over. So it's really not just one person that builds the character. There's a million people, maybe not a million, I'm exaggerating.
Not on this shoot.
Not on this shoot. A small, tight-knit group of very talented people who come together to actually make this character. So it's me, but it's like many other people who were responsible for it.
And so this is another question about the writing process. Did you have a full script, and did you write a treatment and work with the actors? Obviously, you've spoken a little bit about some of the challenges leading up to the production. For example, having to write in Lauren's accident, which ended up benefiting the film. Can you talk a little bit about the kind of challenge of adapting the script from the treatment?
Yeah, I mean, it was my first time writing a feature film too, so I didn't really have like a formula. I just kind of had to figure it out on my own, which I think is a really great way of doing things, because you can have a kind of, this is the way you should do it, but if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work, right? So I would kind of switch back and forth between writing a treatment, putting that into script form, and then kind of going back to the treatment and kind of expanding on things if I felt like the script wasn't working. And that process was probably like 1.5 years. And then about a couple months before we shot, I worked with a script consultant who's actually Elsa, who directed Slacks and wrote Slacks. So it was funny because there was a lot of kind of crossovers of our films. And she really helped kind of push the film in that kind of final stage. and introduce maybe some kind of newer elements that were still kind of in line with the themes and stuff, but kind of helped me push it to a better place. And that really helped a lot. I was very worried about doing last minute changes because you just kind of feel like, well, I have to think about the shots now. I have to think about so many other things. I don't want to change the script, but I think it's good to just keep pushing until the last moment. And so in retrospect, I'm really glad I did that, because I think it made for a better script, and then you have that foundation there. You know, we shot completely out of order. Usually directors want to do at least a little bit in order or something, but I think once we got into scheduling, it was like no scene was back to back. And so relying on the script and kind of going like, okay, I have to trust that I've done that work in advance. And then it wasn't until that we did the first cut with Matthias, the editor, that I was like, right, okay, all that work I'd done beforehand, even though it was tedious, really helps you, obviously. I mean, this is nothing new. This is very basic, you know, script to film stuff, but it really helped me understand that process more, to have that foundation. And then even if you're shooting out of order and you're kind of a bit lost, I was really worried about getting lost because I'd never done a long form thing. And then seeing it all come together, you're like, right, okay, there is an arc, there is a narrative, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. There is structure. So I can't remember what the question was, but I hope
had a
that
pretty
I answered
intense notebook though. I feel like I remember you had like a binder with all of these like graphs and like timelines.
Yeah.
No?
I mean, I think you and I are similarly that we really like to be super organized about stuff. We're not very like wishy-washy. So because I was very nervous about getting lost in the story and kind of where we're at in the story, I like broke the script down into like 5 sections with kind of one keyword. So whenever I was lost or I felt like Lee needed to know where Rowan was at, we would just have these keywords like paranoia, or, you know, I can't remember what the other ones were, but trying to kind of simplify everything for yourself, because on the day it's so crazy. And I think we did the same thing actually on Bloodthirsty, which is my next film that Lauren stars in. We did the same thing where we had 5 different kind of sections where it'd be like, okay, Lauren, desire, or like, this is the kind of world we're in for this one, at least, to kind of compartmentalize yourself, because otherwise it's very daunting and very scary.
It's so helpful. I've never worked with a director who's broken it down like that before. Like, and it was so amazing. And I think I hope I've already said this to you, Amelia, but yeah, I found, I don't know if Lee, you experienced the same thing, but it really just made it seem like you were looking at it from like also an actor perspective and not just a director, which is so helpful to kind of, you know, tell an actor exactly kind of where like those, you want those shifts to happen, where the motive kind of changes. And even if it's just this subtle thing that you kind of plug into the back of your brain before going into a scene, like it translates. And I think, you know, that's probably what also helped with the edit too, is that like you had given Lee these great shifts, like let her know where those shifts would happen, so that once you piece it back together, it's like a beautiful, creepy puzzle.
Yeah, this is a super demanding part. Like it was a demanding movie for everyone. The cast, the crew, we were all cold all the time, drinking a lot of hot chocolate to stay warm. And you don't make a movie like that unless you really, really believe and have confidence in your director. Like you just don't. You wouldn't walk onto set if you didn't have absolute faith that she has a vision for what she's creating. And we all came to set knowing that Amelia like knew what was up. But I also remember there was a lot of scenes where it really felt like Amelia was Rowan also sometimes. Like I like we would just look at each other and we would have this like, I don't know, I felt like Amelia was kind of experiencing it with me, with Rowan. So it was interesting. We were kind of mirrors to each other and sometimes.
That's super interesting.
Yeah, I think as a director, you have to kind of like really understand where the main character is at and empathize. So I think that's where it was coming from a bit, you know. Anyways.
I mean, I find that super interesting because when I first watched it, I definitely felt like, because I know Amelia from not just a Zoom call, that I definitely see the echoes of like you in Rowan, and I didn't know if that was intentional or how much of it is you, but there's definitely like you in it, which is kind of this extra layer of eeriness.
I don't know if I want to go into the whole kind of like personal aspect of it. Yeah, but
Amelia's not.
I think you write. Yeah, I haven't murdered anyone. You know, you write what you know, and you always want to explore things that you're, you know, even if it's a horror movie, you know, you still are trying to explore something human and real and stuff. So I think it's good to kind of think about, I don't know, your own life or the things you observe and, you know, the people around you and stuff too. And so,
I mean, there's a strong emotional reality to the film. And I think that's one of the reasons it resonates so deeply. I'm going to end with one more question, which I do believe is from your editor. And I do think he may have asked another question earlier that I unfortunately lost, so I apologize. Matthias, is anyone currently working on any new projects? Obviously, Amelia did allude to it a little bit, but it would be amazing if everyone can kind of talk about like what we can see you in next and what you're working on, because this is such a like exciting debut for everyone in a way. I would love to hear you guys talking about what you're excited for.
Sure. Well, I think the one all of us, I don't know if anyone's more excited than me for Amelia's sophomore feature, which is coming out starring Lauren. It's called Bloodthirsty. I don't, well, I can't announce, it's not my business to announce it, but stay tuned for that, guys. Yeah, it's very exciting. Amelia and I have also been talking about we're sort of in early stages of pre-development for a feature, a body horror feature. And she's also on board to direct a horror series that I'm developing with a really talented writer called Laura DiGirolamo. She's the founder of Bloody Mary Film Festival. So she's a wonderful advocate for female horror. And I have a short film coming out that I produced. Can't announce anything yet, but stay tuned. It's called Face. It's directed by Sam McLean, and yeah, it's very exciting. And I have another project in the works, but it's very early days for that, but with a friend called Ben. So stay tuned. And but this is my focus actually right now, because this is our premiere, and we still have a festival run to explore, and then on to distribution.
Lee has a lot going on.
I'm sorry.
She's a busy lady.
No, it's so fantastic.
It's great. Doing this, like, it's good. You got shit going on.
It's because there's so many good people to work with, you know, like when you find some really talented people that you like working with, you kind of want to stick with them.
And does anyone else want to add anything? I had a lot of other compliments, and like a lot of people are so clearly very interested in like the interpersonal dynamics of like the characters. There's another movie starting soon though, so I don't want to drag this out too much longer.
Yeah.
So like you can always write about the movie, engage with it online. If you loved it, tell people to watch the second screening, which is, I wish I wrote this down, later in the week.
September 1st.
September 1st.
Yeah. At 3 p.m.
It's a great way to spend your afternoon. I can't imagine anything better. I'd love to thank all three of you. This has been absolutely lovely. You guys have incredible energy and are so thoughtful. And I'm so happy you chose to play the film at Fantasia, because it was really our privilege.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Justine.
Yeah, and thank you so much for everyone who decided to participate in the Q&A. It's really exciting to have so much engagement. It's super fun. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the festival, and bon cinéma.